A lawsuit has been filed over the sham lawsuit. Someone's been sued for filing the sham lawsuit. Let's discuss. Hello, everybody. I have some breaking news on the Justin Baldoni Blake Lively lawsuit front. Remember the so-called sham lawsuit? I did make a couple videos about this, at least one. I went into the whole Van Zandt company and all of that. Well, now Stephanie Jones has officially been sued over it. And you know who sued her? Jennifer Abel. Let me show you what I mean. Now, I think this could have been the biggest story of about 2 weeks ago, where it was allegedly supposedly broken by the Daily Mail, but I think it actually was maybe a YouTuber that put it out first, Katie from Beyond a Crystal Ball. I was suspicious whether or not this Van Zandt company actually was owned by Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds. I mean, a lot of people were saying it was, but I didn't see the proof. This web right here, just so y'all know, is just my thoughts. It's just my thoughts. Nothing in here should be taken as fact. This is just kind of like a mind map. It's not like a proof map or anything. This is Jennifer Abel. Okay, so they're in a legal battle right now. Jennifer Abel is still in, I think, on the side of these folks over here. In any event, they're all getting sued together, so she better be. So she's suing, okay? Just to remind you, this is Blake Lively. This is Leslie Sloan, who's Blake Lively's publicist. You have Justin Baldoni, who's in the legal fight with these two, the Ryan Reynolds. Okay, Jamie Heath. Okay. So the day before yesterday, this was filed, but I think it just hit the docket actually yesterday, at least for me. Maybe my docket comes late. I don't know. But look, defendant Jennifer Abel's amended answer to the complaint and then the counterclaims. Now, I did see some YouTube channels out here saying that this case was dismissed. This case was not dismissed. The motion to dismiss was denied, but not on the merits or on the arguments, but only just denied as moot. The parties can reassert motion to dismiss. So it's not like done and over with forever. Can't listen to everything you hear on YouTube. So this is the lawsuit having to do with Stephanie Jones, Jones Works, and Jennifer Abel. Now, Stephanie Jones has added some other people to this lawsuit, including Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer, and Melissa Nathan. And it is a very long complaint. It is 74 pages long. Now, the first 30 or so pages, I'm just going to scroll through really quickly. This is just the answers. This is Jennifer Abel answering Stephanie Jones's complaint. So for example, I admit, she's like, okay, defendant, this is Abel, admits the allegation that she and Melissa Nathan sent communications containing the text set forth in the paragraph. I deny all of the remaining allegations in the paragraph. Specifically, I deny that the communications are accurately characterized by Stephanie Jones. So it's just stuff like that, right? She's answering Stephanie Jones's complaint, or it was amended, I believe, amended complaint. Nevertheless, let's get to the part where there's the new counterclaims. I'm just going to scroll so that y'all can see how many pages there are. Okay, and she does plead some affirmative defenses. Kind of boilerplate a little bit right here. Let's keep going until we get to counterclaim. Okay, this starts on page 32 out of 74. Now, she starts by just the regular stuff we're used to, okay? Naming the parties, who are they, jurisdictional arguments. Then she gets into the general allegations. Again, this is Jennifer Abel suing her former boss, Stephanie Jones at Jones Works, over that sham lawsuit. There is a lawsuit filed about the sham lawsuit, and some of it is criminal codes. Okay, so at first, Jennifer Abel just lays out the general allegations, and this is stuff that if you follow this story, you're very familiar with. Jones Works is a well-known New York-based public relations firm founded by Stephanie Jones, who is the CEO. She has a disarming Southern twang. She's married to this guy, Jason Hodes or Hodes or whatever. I don't know how to say his name, but he is a partner at a huge talent agency. They say in this law firm that it is Hollywood's most powerful talent agency, William Morris Endeavor, aka WME. I don't agree. I think the most powerful talent agency in Hollywood is CAA. No offense, to y'all over there at WME. None of y'all are ever going to represent me. No. But I don't think I don't ever want a talent agent, and I don't ever want a publicist, because they could just go and reveal all your private text messages and you can end up in a freaking lawsuit with it. I don't want to do that. Anyway, so Jennifer Abel, she claims that she was poached from her former employer whenever she was working at her job happily, dandily, just sitting there working happily. And then Stephanie Jones poached her from her job. And everybody's trying to warn her, don't go work for Stephanie Jones. But she's like, I didn't listen to them. I wanted the pay raise. She says within a few weeks of her starting to work for Stephanie Jones, there was a mass exodus of employees from the office in New York. And Jennifer Abel was like, I was concerned about that. I don't know what that was about. But then Stephanie Jones was like, no, don't worry about that because they were horrible at their jobs anyway. It says Abel quickly realized that morale amongst JonesWorks employees was abysmal. But this morale was inversely correlated to employees' physical proximity to Jones. So the closer you are physically to Stephanie Jones, the lower the morale. The farther away from her physically that you are, out of the room from her, across the country from her, the happier, the higher the morale you will have. That's what this lawsuit is saying. Abel was surprised to learn that in spite of how huge this company was, there was no human resources department and there was no dedicated human resources personnel. There were also no written internal policies. There was no employee handbook. And when Jennifer Abel first started working there, she says she was offered to switch her phone to a company paid for iPhone. But this was an issue. The issue was Abel says that she has been having the same phone number since she was in high school, and she didn't want to give up her personal phone number to her boss. Also, she was already using an Android. She was not using an iPhone. But she decided because, I guess because her pay wasn't high enough or something, I really don't know, that she wanted to go ahead and take Stephanie Jones up on her offer to get the company paid for, the JonesWorks paid for iPhone. So she did do that. She took her own personal cell phone number, Jennifer Abel did, and she decided to, yes, allow that now to be her work number, and the boss, Stephanie Jones, was going to pay for it. She had no problem with this as long as she could retain ownership of her phone number, which Stephanie Jones allegedly did agree to. She had no reason whatsoever to believe that JonesWorks' ownership of the physical iPhone would in any way compromise her right to her privacy on her stuff in her phone, like her personal email and her personal photos. I swear, y'all, I started having flashbacks reading this because one of the huge, important writing assignments of my entire life in law school was this issue exactly. When does the employer have the right to access a personal email? When does the employer have the right to access personal text messages in the scope of employment? Like, I remember working night and day around the clock for weeks, maybe months on this exact issue. I started having flashbacks. Anyway, so here we are, real life. It's coming right back up. Who said law school was pointless? So Abel says she then quickly becomes a higher up at the office in California. There's two major offices. Remember, JonesWorks is based in New York City. So this is the California operation. And so it's kind of like a satellite office, like literally across the country. And this office in California, Abel says that within 2 years, she had grown that office from just 4 employees all the way up to 12 employees. She says she wore a bunch of hats, but technically her job title was vice president. In 2021, they signed a modified employment agreement. That's JonesWorks and Jennifer Abel. And there were new novel restrictions in there. A lawyer did not help Jennifer Abel to negotiate this contract and read it over or anything like that. Now, Jennifer Abel says that her boss, Stephanie Jones, was losing her mind. It says, by Abel's second year, Jones appeared to be deteriorating. That's Stephanie Jones. Abel began to harbor increasing concerns about Jones's mental stability and her ability to manage client and employee relations. Y'all better watch out. They're 2 steps away from saying she needs a conservatorship. Paragraph 35, around the same time, Jones started making FaceTime calls to Jennifer Abel and other employees at odd hours. Her communications frequently tracked through the night into the next morning, suggesting that she had not been sleeping at all. Concurrently, and likely relatedly, Jones became noticeably more paranoid and irascible, often accusing Abel and others of plotting against her. So Stephanie Jones is losing her mind, according to Jennifer Abel. She's walking around the office. She's walking around the office acting crazy and paranoid. She's calling them at all hours of the night, and she thinks her own employees are plotting against her. Due to her NDAs, threats, and the climate of fear pervading the employees and the clients alike, Stephanie Jones's worst excesses were largely hidden from view until about May of last year, when Puck reported that Lauren Sanchez, that's the one just went to space, that's just Jeff Bezos' square-headed girlfriend, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had dropped Stephanie Jones as their publicist. So while these were among the most prominent and publicly reported departures, a cascade of Jones Works clients actually did cut ties with Stephanie Jones at this time, especially after word had spread that Business Insider was contacting Jones's former and current employees and clients about a forthcoming article about her. So Puck started reporting on it, and then Business Insider was going to pick it up. And that's whenever there was a quote cascade of Jones Works clients that said, "Nah, I gotta go." Now, on May 8th, a website called Stephanie Jones Leaks went live along with an X.com account, a Facebook page, a Reddit account, a Pinterest page, all of this stuff. All in one day goes live about Stephanie Jones. But Jennifer A. Bell says, "I didn't have any involvement in that whatsoever." And this is another astroturfing technique, by the way. On the same day, Stephanie Jones Leaks website, Stephanie Jones Leaks X account, Reddit, Pinterest, Instagram, and then all of a sudden here comes a Business Insider article that causes clients to leave. Now, I'm not saying that Stephanie Jones don't maybe deserve it. I'm not saying Stephanie Jones don't maybe has done this to other people and will continue to do so. That's possible. But it is an astroturf technique nevertheless. You had a smaller entity like Puck putting it out. Now, I'm not saying he was put up to it. I'm not saying that he was putting it out because someone told him to, but it still is a very small seeding of a story. And then little by little, you're having, okay, now it's an X account and a website and a Twitter account and an Instagram account, a Pinterest account, and boom, now it's Business Insider. Next thing you know, it could get picked up at the New York Times. Who knows? She would often enlist attorneys to threaten and intimidate employees to agree not to disparage Jones and former clients. She would bully them. She was having an obvious downward spiral. She was in a frenzied state. She would go through the office and tell people she heard that through her psychic, somebody was going to have a baby. "I heard through my psychic that you are an alcohol addict and a gambling addict." And Abel is saying none of this is true. Now, this part I thought was very interesting. Abel, this is Jennifer Abel, the one now suing back over the SHAM article, she was disgusted by Stephanie Jones' quote pattern and practice of creating fake social media accounts to troll former employees and journalists she deemed hostile, including that Matthew Puck from the Puck News, or Matthew Baloney, from the Puck News. She was obsessed with this guy in particular. She, quote, also witnessed Stephanie Jones working with journalists to plant and contribute to negative stories. Y'all, every time I pause and do this face, like I knew it when it was going on, that it was like actually being pushed. I knew when it was going on that the media narrative was being pushed. I knew it. But when I said it, I know at least half of people, I sounded a little bit like conservatorship or jail girl, you're having paranoid delusions, but I wasn't. This is what was going on. Now, I'm not saying Stephanie Jones was behind it all, although at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. The way they're describing this, like the fake social media accounts just popping up and their only job is just to troll one person, that happened to me. The accounts are still up. The accounts are still up. These people knew what I was wearing in court before I ever posted it, before I ever talked about it, before I ever told anyone. They knew what I was wearing in court, and they were tweeting live from in court. Who could that be? But yes, they are obsessed with me. They were obsessed with me. Again, I'm not saying Stephanie Jones. I just heard of this woman a couple months ago with the Baldoni stuff. Now, Jennifer A. Bell says that she finally had just had it whenever Stephanie Jones, demanded that Jennifer corroborate falsified accusations about a senior JonesWorks employee in an effort to drive him out. Jennifer A. Bell says when she refused to go along with it, Stephanie Jones responded with mockery. This is her boss. And she called her employee, quote, a 12-year-old drama queen. We get the name of the chief of staff, Gordon Duran. Abel said she did agree to let JonesWorks have some access to her number, but it was to, quote, port her personal cell phone number to the phone plan. And it was predicated on her reasonable expectation that she was going to retain the sole exclusive access to the contents and private data. Had there been any reason to believe otherwise, Jennifer says, I would have never agreed to the arrangement. It would be unimaginable that she would agree to let her employer have the right to access, monitor, or much less assert ownership over all her private data. As a result of JonesWorks' continued representations, Jennifer Abel was caught completely off guard by what they did next. And she says what they did next was, quote, steal all of her private data. She shows up at the office. There's this physically imposing security guard, a forensic data extraction technical expert, and an attorney sitting at a conference table that had a bunch of documents on it. On information and belief, the attorney was affiliated with the firm Frankfurt, Kernet, Klein, and Seltz, and the security and technology personnel were from Edgeworth Security Services. Also present was Jones' chief of staff, Duran, who had flown in unannounced from New York. She looked over out of the conference room, and actually the exit was being blocked. She inferred that she was not free to leave. There, the attorney gestured at the documents, implying, that Jennifer Abel needed to review these documents and sign them. And in this meeting, Jennifer Abel says that the attorney suspected that she had retained proprietary info on her personal laptop. The attorney said that unless you turn your laptop over, then we have grounds to sue you. So she's caught completely off guard. She's in shock, fearful, and she says she dissociated. Given the coercion and the threats, she was under extreme duress, and she allowed her laptop to be searched. She said that they did not find anything on the laptop. They searched it again, and they didn't find anything again. She was ambushed. She did not have sufficient warning. She had given her passcode over for the limited purpose of just transferring her number. But then she leaves, she goes to Verizon, and then never heard from them again. After 4 hours of desperate unanswered calls, she left the cell phone store Verizon in panic and despair. She realized that she had been double-crossed by Stephanie Jones, and as a result, she lost access to her bank accounts, utilities, insurance, and virtually every other sensitive account. By contrast, Jones now had unrestricted access to everything on Jennifer Abel's phone, her text messages, her emails, her personal photos. Jones could read communications with her fiance, parents, friends, everyone, and Jones was acting purely out of spite. It took Jennifer Abel over a month to regain control over all her accounts. Meanwhile, she learned that Stephanie Jones had been sharing her private text messages. She retained access to the iCloud for multiple months, monitoring and intercepting her private communications. And y'all, this is crazy. You know how the lawsuit started in December? Look at this. Paragraph 70. Abel was under the mistaken impression that by switching her phone number, she had cut off Jones and Jones Works' access to her text messages. Not so. In fact, Jennifer Abel's text messages were tied to her iCloud, not her phone number. So until she changed her actual iCloud password in January this year, a month after the litigation started, and she said it was for unrelated reasons. So until January this year, 2 months ago, Jones, quote, had been intercepting and monitoring all of Jennifer Abel's text exchanges, including not only with her clients, her fiance, her doctors, her parents, and her friends, but also with the lawyers. Imagine your texts, your calls to your lawyers, your email. Oh my God. Oh my God. Because she had the password to the phone. Like she had the actual phone. So even though Jennifer Abel had changed her phone number, because the phone itself and the phone number was tied to a certain iCloud account, Stephanie Jones was able to see it even after the lawsuits and everything. This intrusion ceased only by happenstance during the pendency of litigation. For almost 4 years, Abel managed the Wayfarer account. Wayfarer was in the middle of a massive PR crisis having to do with the It Ends With Us movie. Jennifer Abel recommends a crisis management specialist, which is Melissa Nathan. She knew that Stephanie Jones was going to be mad at that, though. Something about positioning Baldoni's religion as a cult was on the table at some point. Stephanie Jones viewed Melissa Nathan as a competitor. She did not like her, but they left the decision up to Wayfarer. It all starts kind of falling out because Jones Works, Stephanie Jones particularly, is reaching out to the Daily Mail and to Sony, and she's doing this despite having been told allegedly not to do so. At this time, Melissa Nathan started hearing from other journalists that Leslie Sloan, that's Blake Lively's PR manager or like publicist or whatever, she was planting negative stories about them, even though they had like agreed to this truce. Stephanie Jones was sharing Jennifer Abel's messages with other employees at the Jones Works firm, allegedly. Now it gets to the sham lawsuit here. Jones Works needed a veneer of legitimacy Blake Lively and them anticipated, or they maybe were told directly, that the New York Times is not going to traffic in a stolen communication. Under these circumstances, they needed the quote color of law. Jones and Jones Works, for their part, wanted to insulate themselves from legal exposure to Wayfair for breaches of confidentiality. So, on September 27th, 2024, working hand in glove with Stephanie Jones, Jones Works, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and their counsel, Manat, Phelps, and Phillips, they initiated a quote, SHAM legal proceeding in New York State Court. Van Zandt Inc. Does 1 through 10. The SHAM lawsuit was, quote, nothing more than a transparent ploy to obtain subpoena power. The plaintiff, Van Zandt, is an inactive corporate entity affiliated with Lively and Reynolds. See, it don't say owned by. So y'all got to be careful what you're saying out here. Okay? Affiliated with Lively and Reynolds, entirely unrelated to the film or the Wayfarer parties, the lawsuit asserts 3 causes of action: breach of contract, breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and faithless servant against Doe defendants only. The lawsuit does not explain how or why Van Zandt was unable to identify the proper defendants. So why didn't they sue anybody? Like, they didn't say like, oh, okay, I want to sue P. Diddy and John Doe bodyguard too. It just said I want to sue a bunch of John Does, Jane Does. And they don't explain why they don't identify anybody. Instead, they implausibly claim not to be privy to the identities of its own contractual counterclaims or its own employees, contractors, agents, or representatives. The lawsuit is devoid of specific allegations against anyone, much less Abel, relying exclusively, that's a thing, on generalized recitations. They knew for sure at this point Jennifer Abel was one of the defendants they were going to be suing. Jennifer Abel says they didn't not know. They knew exactly who it was because they already had my phone. She already had gone through all my messages. She knew exactly who it was. The reason that it says Jane Doe and John Doe is because she knew that if she put Jennifer Abel and served it upon me, I would fight her disclosing it. I would fight any subpoena that Blake Lively or anybody from Van Zandt would possibly send out. And so for that reason, she didn't put my name on there. She knew who I was. She just said Jane Doe, John Doe. Notably, Van Zandt never requested the assignment of a judge. They never substituted these Doe defendants for named parties, and they never served the complaint on anyone. The only docket entries are the complaint and a notice of dismissal, filed December 19th, the day before Blake Lively filed her different other complaint, the CRD complaint against the Wayfarer parties. The same day that the lawsuit was filed, September 27th, 2024, Stephanie Jones, warned a departing employee from Jones Works not to work for Jennifer Abel because her business ain't going to be around much longer. She said Jennifer Abel's, quote, business wouldn't be around much longer. Once the lawsuit that they're calling a sham lawsuit was filed, the Lively parties used it to issue a subpoena to Jones Works for all data. Oh my God. All of the data on her entire phone, including private communications from her personal iCloud and email accounts, as well as potentially privileged information. Since there were no identifiable parties and no party had been served, the subpoenas were issued without notice, depriving Jennifer Abel of any knowledge of the subpoena, much less the opportunity to object. I'm informed and believe, and I allege, that the sham lawsuit was contrived by the Lively parties and Jones, acting in concert to facilitate and cover up Jones's release of the data extracted from Abel's phone, all under the guise of legal process. And that way they would not risk, quote, detection by interested parties, including Abel, who would have intervened to stop the flagrant abuse of process. Because see, Jennifer Abel is saying they took my whole entire iCloud account. It wasn't like, okay, so you send me a few text messages between Justin Baldoni and me, which I'm sure Jennifer Abel would have still objected to. But she's like, they took the whole iCloud account. Obviously, I would have intervened to stop her doing that. They did this to, quote, create a veneer of legitimacy and afford Stephanie Jones plausible deniability once the New York Times came through for Lively. Wow. It is on this pretext that Jones Works, Stephanie Jones, and her lawyer have described this as a, quote, court-ordered subpoena. It was not court-ordered. There was no judge. How could a judge order something? As a result of Jones's malicious scheme, Jennifer Abel's life has been turned upside down. They had, quote, unimaginable invasion on her privacy and her dignity. Jones and the Lively parties now possess full contents of Abel's iCloud, email accounts, including her photos. Woo! Text messages and emails. She lives in fear of what is to come, given the vast troves of personal data in the possession of these hostile actors. Okay, so what is she suing for? Well, she's suing under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. This act prohibits the intentional accessing without authorization of a computer under certain circumstances and is supposedly, quote, unlawful. And she's also saying that this was a knowing intent to defraud. Abel is also suing Jones Jones Works for violations of the Stored Communications Act, which is a similar cause of action. Similar. It's based on similar types of activities. Someone who intentionally accesses without authorization or intentionally exceeds with electronic communication services. She's also suing under the Federal Wiretapping Act. So she's saying that she was basically like eavesdropped on intentional interception, use, or disclosure of any wire, oral, or electronic communication. And y'all, these allegations I think are much more serious and much more well-founded than her previous allegations, which included like kidnapping or false imprisonment or something. Now she's also suing under the California Penal Code. This is a criminal code, but sometimes criminal codes have civil or private causes of action. And this one is knowingly accessing and without permission obtaining, altering, disseminating, or otherwise using Jennifer Abel's data, computer system, computer network to devise and execute a scheme and artifice to defraud and deceive and wrongfully control and obtain property and data. She sues for invasion of privacy. She sues for conversion. She sues for intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. She sues for promissory fraud because she was promised that they would only use the password and the number to just transfer over the phone. That was a lie. She reasonably relied on these promises, and she's asking for this relief. Now, before I let you go, I do want to say Mitchell Schuster signed this as Jennifer Abel's attorney. And Mitchell Schuster is also representing Shannon Sharpe. He's the one who signed, the statement that I read on my video about Shannon Sharpe. Literally, I think it was yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, Shannon Sharpe. Team emailed me. Mitchell Schuster is that lawyer's name. So we have got to put the webbing together, got to put Shannon Sharpe. I had the Shannon Sharpe web separate from this one. I had that one into this one now because we got a lawyer shares a web. That's a point of connection. That's all I really had for this one, y'all. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Love you, meet. Okay, bye.